Hi, everyone. My name is Satyam, and welcome to the seminar Variations on the Great Refusal 2. The first Variations on the Great Refusal Seminar situated this notion in the speculative aesthetics of Alfred North Whitehead and in Herbert Marcuse's Eros and Civilization. This seminar proposes the idea of great refusal as a lens through which to look at the nature of aesthetic achievement in contemporary artistic practice and the ethical commitment by intellectuals. In this second edition of the Great Refusal Seminar, an outstanding contemporary filmmaker, curator, and sociologist will reflect on the idea of the Great Refusal in relation to aesthetic achievement, not as an other to reason, but rather as requiring the intellectual courage to grant reason the exercise of its full rights. They will chart their own trajectory in navigating the Great Refusal in the context of the highly fraught public discourse about Israel and Palestine. Dante Alighieri first introduces the idea of great refusal into the Western literary canon in his Divine Comedy. Here, the shade who commits the great refusal is emblematic of those who err eternally in the antechamber of hell in pursuit of the banner of conformity. Whitehead famously revives the notion of the great refusal as the mark of intellectual cowardice, namely as the refusal to grant reason the exercise of its full rights. However, he also defines the great refusal in diametrically opposite terms as the hallmark of aesthetic achievement. It is in the second sense an aesthetic achievement that the great refusal has entered the vocabulary of 20th century emancipatory movement via Herbert Marcuse as a rallying cry for emancipation against oppression and injustice. Dante's great refusal has thus ultimately become the legacy of the exiled poet's intellectual and aesthetic courage, namely his refusal to be cowed by self-doubt and his courage to place the rank and file of his powerful contemporaries in the Divine Comedy's hell. In this seminar, we will hear from those who have entered the fray of a highly polarized public discourse through a courageous act of refusal, a refusal of censorship, and a refusal of injunctions against the exercise by reason of its full rights. The seminar allows us to tune into the intellectual sensitivity we inherit from thinkers like Dante, Whitehead, and Marcuse. We will take abreast of the problematic nature of inner conflicts that great refusals imply, undecidability, and self-deliberation. To look at contemporary art through this prism allows us to regain the means of complexity. The speaker for this seminar is Cécile Malaspina. I'll introduce Cécile first, and then I'll also introduce other speakers later on. Cécile Malaspina is the author of An Epistemology of Noise, published by Bloomsbury in 2018, and principal translator of Gilbert Simondon's On the Mood of Existence of Technical Objects, published by the University of Minnesota Press in 2017. She is directory the program at College International de Philosophie, Paris, and visiting research fellow at King's College London and the University of the West of England, where her program for the CIF is hosted by departments of French and philosophy, respectively. She is contributing editor for Angelaki, Journal of the Theoretical Humanities, commissioning editor of the independent publisher Copy Press, and guest editor at Nature, Humanities and Social Sciences Communications. Cécile Malaspina obtained her doctorate in epistemology, philosophy, and history of the sciences and technology from Paris 7 Denis Diderot, and her master's in contemporary French philosophy and critical theory from the Center for Research in Modern European Philosophy in the UK. Before turning to philosophy, she trained as an artist, art historian at Goldsmiths, and curator at the RCA. Her main interest lies in the normativity of concepts, especially with regard to the aesthetic and ethical implications of conceptualizing contingency and uncertainty. The speakers for the seminar include the award-winning filmmaker and journalist Shireen Yaspek, Galit Eliad, curator and director of the Medusa Foundation, Ashchan Azur, sociologist, author of the award-winning book Reclaiming Humanity in Palestinian Hunger Strikes, Political Subjectivity and Decolonizing the Body, published by Palgrave in 2021, and Cécile Malaspina, who's a philosopher and a programmer at the New Center for Research and Practice, and like I said, an author of An Epistemology of Noise, published by Bloomsbury in 2018. So with that, Cécile, it's all up to you. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you also for moderating this seminar series, which is a one-credit seminar, and we will have 4 sessions. This is the first, meant as an introduction. Some of you I know already because we've done seminars together before. Then also new faces, and I look forward to meeting you all. If you want to put your cameras on to have more of a seminar vibe and not leave me alone with this daunting task of wading into this difficult, for me, I have to say, difficult territory, that would be also really lovely, but obviously it's no obligation. So I'm going to start by admitting how difficult it was for me to prepare this seminar. In fact, I've been 90% of the work for the preparation for this seminar has been extremely intense procrastination, where I was just trying to understand by which angle to start this, how personal, how deeply to get into the personal aspect of it. And I think I want to start by situating myself with regard to using the idea of the Great Refusal as a prism for the ongoing omerta. As I am a German, I perceive what is going on in Germany as an omerta, as a prohibition to speak about the genocide committed by Israel in Gaza, and the refusal to grant reason its full rights, and also the refusal to contemplate the complexity of what's going on. And that refusal is not only on behalf of those who would like to present a strictly a pro-Israeli view, for example, the German government, who decide that everything that is not conform to this view is anti-Semitic. I think it is by virtue of the polarization of the discourse, it is something to which the entire field of the discourse and debate is vulnerable. So the question is, how do you reclaim the means of complexity without simplifying things and getting the vital truths nevertheless right? And so I'm going to split this in presentation today in two parts. And after that, we're going to hopefully have time to discuss a little bit and also talk about the essays that you might want to write at the end of this seminar. And also hopefully I will have time for each of you to introduce yourselves, say what your background is, what you're bringing to this, and what you're hoping to get out of this seminar together. So I'm going to share my screen with you in a slightly lo-fi way. Right, here you are. Okay. Just a moment. Okay. So I presume you can see the whole screen, right? I think we'll keep it like that because then I'm not going to get confused about what buttons to press. I want to go on to something else. Can you see the whole screen, or is it like obscured by part of the
No, the whole screen.
Gallery? You can see the whole screen. Okay. Can you still see me though?
I can still see you.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay. So how do I? Okay. Variations on the Great Refusal. So we've had the little introduction already. And I want to start with this poem by C.P. Cavafy, a Greek poet who took a line from Dante's in Divine Comedy, namely the famous line where he goes into the antechamber of hell and he discovers among all the people who are eternally in the antechamber of hell after this banner of conformity in agony, suddenly he sees the one who committed the Great Refusal, but we'll never know who this great, the author of the Great Refusal is. Che fece il gran rifiuto, the one who did the Great Refusal. Let me just get this out of the way. So for some people, there's a day when they have to come out with the great yes or the great no. It is clear at once who has the great yes ready in him? And saying it, he goes on to find honor strong in his conviction. He who refuses never repents. Asked again, he'd still say no. Yet that no, the righteous no, or the right answer, defeats him the whole of his life. So we'll come back to this a little bit later. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Kavafi, who is like the godfather of queer poetry, and also in absolute terms, a really magnificent poet who was capable of extracting from aesthetic satisfaction and ambiguity that haunts you when you read it closely. So what I want to say first, perhaps, is that my experience of trying to talk about what is going on in Germany with respect to, I mean, the whole seminar is not about Germany, but me being German, it's not only Germany that struck me, but it's a particular dilemma that whenever I went back to Germany, I found that mentioning the conflict is like smashing a bottle on a dinner table. It was something, awkward silence, nobody says anything, people are uncomfortable. If you press the issue a little bit, people will, say the word Israel or Gaza under the hand like this, hiding it away. And I thought, what is going on here? I mean, I'm talking about going home, not necessarily in an academic environment or an artistic environment where people are perhaps more steeped already in the dynamics of the controversy and have taken up a position that they can proclaim loudly. So this is more a situation where people are have been throughout 2 years uncomfortable. If I would send articles, they wouldn't reply. I'm talking about people I've known all my life. And just one person right at the beginning said to me, look, scusa, said to me, look, it's about Islamophobia. I thought, okay. And right at the beginning, and just after, I think, November, December 2023, I thought, well, maybe that's a bit of a hasty definition of the problem. And then with time, I think this is something that came to the fore more strongly. And I want to jump to the end of this PowerPoint here to an article that was recently written by Jörg Lau in The Guardian. He's the editor of Die Zeit, a newspaper that I have struggled to, occasionally I would kind of compare what's written in the UK, where I live, what's written in the newspapers in Germany. And I found even very recently that you open the Die Zeit and there's no mention of Gaza. Just after Trump said that he will kind of own Gaza and kind of expel everyone and not give them a right of return, there was no mention of it. So it is something that puts me in an extremely charged emotional state, which makes it so difficult to do a presentation like this. So in this article here, A Political Gamble Backfires, Jörg Lau talks about Friedrich Merz. He's the contender for the German Conservative Party. He would like to be the next prime minister in Germany. And Merz pushed through a resolution in parliament on immigration, or tried to. I don't know what the aftermath was of this, because it became a big scandal, because he managed to push this resolution through with the votes of the AfD, which is the extreme right-wing party, which also has, of which, prominent members have been tried and also found guilty of having used paroles from kind of Nazi language, basically. So what is the situation with this Jörg Lau? He says, okay, look, Merz made a mistake. It was a gamble. He clearly says he wants nothing to do with this AfD, and he thought it was the right thing to put through this motion on immigration because this is what the German voters want. And he tripped up on it. But really, this is the first time. And this is the first thing that shocked me about this article, because 4 years ago, the contender to be prime minister in Germany, I think it was 4 years ago, Kramp-Karrenbauer. She was a candidate who had been favored by Merkel, and she resigned from the same party, the CDU, because of the willingness of members of her own party to make electoral deals with the AfD. So this is a major thing to lose a prime ministerial candidate like this. And therefore, so this article says, okay, no, this is the first time. Okay, it's not the first time. There's a problem with mainstream conservative parties sympathizing with, and not a lot of people in that area not finding it as bad as it is made out to be. In this article, for instance, he says, no, the CDU, the conservatives, the whole of Germany has built itself on the acknowledgement of what has gone wrong in Germany, the acknowledgement of the Holocaust, of the Shoah, and shoring up against right-wing radicalism and shoring up against anti-Semitism. And so the whole article is about this, about also fighting against the denial of the Holocaust, which is something that has been characteristic of the far right. And then the striking thing about the article is that he doesn't mention once the genocide. And in fact, in Germany, I'm not even sure it's legal if I go to Germany, if I call it a genocide. And I'll come to the definition of a genocide in a little moment. In fact, let's do it now. Here you have, wait. Where is it? Here you go. There's a screenshot I took, thankfully, because I couldn't find it anymore afterwards, on the 4th of February, where Trump says himself, so it's from the horse's mouth, there is nothing in Gaza but death and destruction. It's a demolition site. So you couldn't have a definition more straightforward and clear, which would be conform with what is said in the Convention on Human Rights in the Article 2, namely the definition of genocide as acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group, and on elements of the crime, a mental element, the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, and the physical element, killing members, causing serious bodily or mental harm, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction. So I think this is the wrong one, because I was looking for the one on ethnic cleansing. Anyway, this is Trump himself saying that this is what happened here. There's only death and destruction. It's a demolition site. So coming back to my consternation with Germany. Where is he? Yeah, Glau. I had him a moment ago. Here. Why is it so difficult and even forbidden in Germany to pronounce the word genocide? Outstanding scholars, even Jewish scholars and historians too, have warned that it could be a genocide and have come to the conclusion that this is what's happening now. Why is it impossible? So what is the connection between the denial of a Holocaust here, denial of a genocide here, and the denial also of a mainstream conservative party having, not for the first time, shown sympathies with extreme right-wing views? So this is something I need to grapple with. It's really difficult as a German. It's difficult when you, when you have been raised also with a memory culture in the way that I've done, that I've been. So I want to give another personal dimension to this. My first encounter of the word philosophy was through a book that my grandfather gave me. I think I was 12 or something like this, an introduction into philosophy, a book written in 1926. So nobody in my family ever had university degree. I think I was the first one. And nevertheless, my grandfather was someone who would cut out articles. When Adorno died, he sent me an article annotated, "This is for you." And I hadn't got the faintest clue what philosophy was, and I couldn't also understand the content of the article. But I understood from this that there is something important about philosophy. So years later, when I looked at this, and it's written in the Gothic script, so it's not exactly easy to figure out what's going on in there. There was a cutout in this introduction to philosophy. The fundamental directions of ethics, or the fundamental orientations of ethics by Hugo Marcuse. And on the back of this article, there's another one here. I'll try and go a little bit closer. You can see it well. The aesthetes and the Dionysians. So this was a kind of, I think it's also kind of interesting for thinking about aesthetics and art theory now, and many of the debates that we have now. So this is a kind of traditional trope of opposing kind of Apollonian formal aesthetics to a Dionysian aesthetics of desire and chaos. And at the end of this article here, it says, I'll read it in German and then I'll give you the sense of it in English. Wenn dieses Leben überhaupt einen Sinn hat, so ist es der Entwicklung der Persönlichkeit, Herausbildung aller in uns schlummernden Kräfte und Fähigkeiten, mit anderen Worten, höchstmögliche Intensivierung des Innenlebens, Steigerung des normalen Bewusstseins, das alles zu dem Zweck, die Freude am Leben zu erhöhen und die Genussfähigkeit zu steigern. Wer das Leben liebt und es anstatt mit der Inbrunst der sachlichen des sachlichen Altertums, den wird auch des Lebens Weh und Leid nicht niederbringen. Eingedenk des Wortes des Dichter-Philosophen, so this is a quotation, I think, of Nietzsche. Weh, sprich, vergeh, doch alle Lust will Ewigkeit, will tiefe, tiefe Ewigkeit. So this is a kind of endorsement of a Dionysian emphasis on intensity and desire and the will to be alive, and that whatever suffering you may experience, it is temporary, and desire is eternal. So my grandfather, one of the few things I remember of him is also that he told me that young men were marching into World War I and World War II with Nietzsche in their backpack. So what you'll see just below, and this is what really caught my attention, and I think in a way, although I never read this famous introduction to philosophy because it's kind of difficult for me to read in the Gothic script, or maybe there's other reasons why I've postponed it. There is a dilemma in this gift that has still accompanied me for my whole undertaking of philosophy, which is that philosophy is not divorced from life. It's not a kind of series of formal questions and concepts and figuring out what is the most adequate way of describing a reality. Doing this has ethical consequences always. And this is why I want to read you the little snippet that made it into this cutout, almost by mistake. And I don't know in what year this article was cut out, but you'll hear from the language probably what it is about. And I'll read it in German again and then tell you what it is about. And it's the fight against alcoholism, der Kampf gegen die Trinksucht. Actually, rather than reading the whole thing, I will just say, read the things that I underlined here. Die ausnahmslos schwer entarteten Menschen, so people who are alcoholics are, without exception, severely so entarted. I don't know if any one of you can help me, maybe how this is translated traditionally. It's there are humans who have lost their right to belong to the species human. So they are no longer humans. So alcoholics are, without exception, profoundly, what is the right word? Degenerate, are profoundly degenerate human beings. Trunkenbolde, so drunks, who die in their addiction and destroy themselves, therefore fulfill an iron law of nature, which is the destruction of everything that is not worthy of life. Lebenstauglich is not worthy of everything that is not suitable for life or capable of life. So there's this iron law of nature, which is that every living being that doesn't have what it takes to live should perish. And those who don't perish straight away become sources of rot in society. So this is my introduction to philosophy, the affirmation of a Dionysian love for life, the eternal desire, and this against the kind of backdrop of the, I don't even know what the word is for this, an absolute contempt for human beings. Just to make this kind of context more, a little bit more personal, this is myself and my father, who was a severe alcoholic and indeed died of his alcoholism in '89. So who would fulfill all the criteria of this snippet of article that was my introduction to philosophy. And this is me and my grandmother from the northeast of Germany, who was like a mute person and never ever talked. A little bit like the silence now about what's going on in Gaza. She was I was told by my French mother that she wasn't a loving grandmother because she never talked, but I felt that she was a loving grandmother. And yet I look back and I think, what do I know about this human being? What was her role in the war? What sides did she take? What sides could she have taken? How do you retrospectively square the silence, the atrocities that were committed in Germany, and the humanity of the people that you've loved? And likewise, I think now many people who are alive now and culpable in varying degrees, committing or aiding through military or diplomatic aid or in other ways, wherever in the world, by the way, people who share this responsibility will, what is their humanity when they will, in one day, they will have pictures like this with their grandchildren, and people will have to somehow try and unpeel the onion and say, what aspect of this human being I love is human? Where does humanity reduce itself like this to the point that it cannot see the human in the other? And this is what's going to bring me back to the Great Refusal, not just the human, which is a common nature, so it is a category, but the individual in the other. I'm going to spare you another very personal story, but I think what is going on when crimes like this happen, when cruelty goes from the personal level, if you like, this the contending within families, for instance, the cruelty sometimes within families reaches a kind of community level, society level, country level, continent level. What goes on in there is not just the fact that some people are bereft of the status of our common nature, the category of human. the dehumanization of people. I think what is at stake also is the loss of individuality. When you know someone as an individual, like I knew my grandmother, for instance, it's not so easy to square the individual with the categories that also belong to them, culpable or not culpable. I'll never know. So this is a picture here I'm sharing with you by a friend I made in my 20s. Hannah Pravda was a lady in her mid-90s who came knocking at my door when I had a party, and she was kind of wrapped in a pink fluffy dressing gown with her hair that looked like an explosion. And she said, gosh, you're making an awful lot of noise. And I invited her in and gave her a glass of champagne, and we became really good friends. And before she died, she gifted me this painting. And Hannah Pravda is someone who has survived Auschwitz. So she escaped Auschwitz with the raw potato in her pocket and walked back to Czechoslovakia, back home. And one of the reasons why I want to mention her here too is that she told me when she arrived back, she only had the desire to die. Her body was so emaciated, she just couldn't take it anymore. She'd been looking for a husband for the preceding years because they'd been separated and couldn't find him again, and she just wanted to die. And a year later, so she was an actress, and she went back and then joined a theater company that was founded there. And a year later, she was pregnant. And she told me the extraordinary thing is that from the absolute depth of annihilation, life still springs forth and life starts again. So this is, if you like, some of the background that I wanted to bring to this iteration of the Great Refusal, which I think is a lens that is worth training onto the moments of crisis that we live, this being one of them. So, and now I want to get a little bit into the Great Refusal and read you sections from a paper that I published that I also shared with you, so that you know a little bit about the story, Dante's story, and going beyond, if you like, both the personal and the historical, the concrete historical moments that we're living now, how this kind of opens up against the wider, more speculative and perhaps more formal philosophical questions. So in the third canto of Dante's Inferno, Virgil leads the poet into the antechamber of hell. What are these noises I hear? Dante asks Virgil. It is the repulsive choir, answers Virgil, of the angels who remained undecided in neutrality when Lucifer turned against God, and the sad souls who lived a life, but lived it with no blame and with no praise. Dante then sees the shadow of, or the shade of, the coward who made the Great Refusal. The nameless figure has long been associated with Pope Celestine V, whose abdication in 1294 precipitated a political calamity as well as Dante's own exile and destitution. So this was a good pope. This was someone who was supposed to become pope, and he was persuaded that as a humble man, as a man of prayer, he didn't really want to have anything to do with this power. And by resigning rather than stepping up when history demands that you take a position, he brought about this calamity. The trope of the Great Refusal thereby enters the canon of Western literature as a searing indictment of the cowardice of those who live a life without blame and without praise, and whose greatness lies only in the historic consequence of their pusillanimity. So it's not just cowardice, it's more a form of looking after your own interest first. And I think this is quite an important concept when I try to understand why it is that the people I know in Germany won't speak up. It's not that you get beaten up, you don't get thrown into prison, although some people have had their shows canceled or their prizes canceled. I think it's looking after your own interest. It's thinking that if you're going to speak up, perhaps this may have negative consequences for your professional development. I think this would be pusillanimity, if you like, rather than cowardice. It's not someone that you're in front of a mob that's going to beat you up and have you got the courage or not to stake your ground. It's more something, pusillanimity. It's this idea that you stay in the safe zone. You look after your own interests first. Now, Dante's Divine Comedy pivots on the inward contemplation of this cowardliness. So cowardliness is not the exact right translation of the word that he uses, viltade. It's a lack of virtue, is a better way of saying it, which Dante first ascribes to his fictional self. So the only other time that we find this adjective in the Divine Comedy is right at the beginning when he describes himself. You could say it's like, I interpret it like a fictional account of the real Dante setting about writing the Divine Comedy when he's going to put all the powerful people of his own time in hell, or not this, but where he speaks truth to power. And in the beginning of this writing, you see the fictional Dante like this. Dante first ascribes to his fictional self this nullifying unease that voids his undertaking of journeying through hell and heaven, and which one may interpret as the doubt befalling the exiled poet upon embarking on the writing of the Divine Comedy. And he said, and I quote him, like one who unchooses his own choice. Like one who unchooses his own choice. And thinking again, undoes what he started. It's the trepidation. It's not having had a great idea. I know I want to do this, and then undoing your choice, unchoosing your choice, undoing the beginning of your deed. So there's a resonance between the aesthetic achievement in Dante's own overcoming of this pusillanimity, the fact that he does write the Divine Comedy. So his own great refusal, the refusal of the refusal, the refusal to be a coward, if you like, and the revival of this phrase by the 20th century philosopher Alfred North Whitehead in a book called Science in the Modern World. So Whitehead uses this to shine an unforgiving light on the prosperous middle classes, those who placed an excessive value upon placidity of existence, refusing to face the necessities for social and intellectual reform. But just as the fictional Dante overcomes this cowardliness to write the Divine Comedy, refusing the cowardly refusal, so does Whitehead turn the notion of the refusal on its heels, such that it flips from the great refusal of rationality to assert its own rights, a form of lazy dogmatism, to becoming the primary characteristic of the vital truth of an aesthetic achievement. So in the aesthetic achievement, there is a vital truth, and this vital truth has something to do with the great refusal in a positive sense. So the great refusal thus becomes the hallmark of the philosopher and of the artist's audacity. Now, the Great Refusal is mostly known through Herbert Marcuse's 1966 Eros in Civilization as a rallying cry for principled opposition to injustice and repression. So I think we'll skip probably, what is the time actually? Oops, goes so quickly. So I think you got the idea from Dante. I will skip here and we'll skip right to Science in the Modern World, where we find again this notion of the Great Refusal, which Herbert Marcuse will later bring to fame in Eros in Civilization, and from where it will radiate throughout the 20th and 21st century grassroots movements of emancipation. However, this formulation of the Great Refusal, which Marcuse takes from Whitehead, when you read it, it is at first forbiddingly enigmatic. I mean, maybe you'll find it very clear. I certainly was a bit gobsmacked by it and really couldn't understand it at first. And to try and understand it, this is why I wrote this text, although I'm not a Whitehead specialist. And if there is someone amongst you who is a fine Whitehead reader, I'd love, I'm totally open to for this to be discussed and maybe different interpretations to be brought here. So at stake is, and this is the definition of the Great Refusal as aesthetic achievement, highlight it here so that you see where we are. The truth. And I read it twice because if you're like me, you'll probably find this a little bit hard to penetrate. The truth that some proposition respecting an actual occasion is untrue, a proposition that is untrue of an actual occasion, may express the vital truth as to the aesthetic achievement. It expresses the great refusal, which is its primary characteristic. So the proposition respecting an actual occasion that is untrue. The great refusal, the primary characteristic of an aesthetic achievement, and also the expression of its vital truth. I think this is not at all an easy definition of aesthetic achievement, and it also, it's not like it comes in a straightforward way as an explanation in the next paragraph. You kind of have to really express it out between the lines. But let's quickly beeline back to Marcuse. Marcuse interprets Whitehead's words through a Freudian lens. So he quotes this line from Whitehead in Eros and Civilization. The great refusal for Marcuse must be understood as the refusal to resign oneself to the separation from the libidinous object or subject. Placing it alongside a citation of the surrealist André Breton, who refuses, and I quote here, this is the other quote next to the great refusal, who refuses to forget what can be. So it's got something to do not with actual reality only, but also with the halo of possibilities that exists around actual reality. Marcuse thereby seeks to rehabilitate the role of the imagination in what becomes the refusal of the limits imposed by the Freudian reality principle. And I quote Marcuse here, in its refusal to forget what can be, so lies the critical function of fantasy. In its refusal to forget what can be, lies the critical function of fantasy. And his quotation of, oh, I was trying to highlight it for you. His quotation of Whitehead in this context may lend itself to a redefinition of philosophy. In its refusal to forget what can be, lies the critical function of philosophy. This is my suggestion. It's not what Marcuse says. The imagination here becomes a firewall against the Freudian reality principle, whose logic relies on the repressive function of reason. And likewise, Whitehead also tries to build a firewall against a reality principle, which would be a kind of scientific dogma of what he calls the bifurcation of nature, but we won't go into this here, whose logic also relies on the repressive function of reason. So reading Whitehead closely will help us precisely to avoid the trap of a double negation. So first I suggested Dante refuses the refusal of cowardliness, and not that would issue in a simple affirmation. So you affirm your creative act, you write the Divine Comedy because you refused the refusal. So double negation becoming an affirmation. And that would leave it, that would be too simple. So there's something else, at least as insofar as Whitehead is concerned, there's something more interesting going on with negation here. At stake is the constitutive role that Whitehead reserves for negativity in his speculative philosophy. In his speculative philosophy and the aesthetics that it contains, the second refusal, in fact, expresses a negativity that is both necessary and significant. So this negativity isn't just wiped away by becoming positive through a double negation. It's not like no becomes yes. It's the negativity that has its own importance. Affording actions their full importance is situated in a halo of alternatives whose non-actualization is relevant to the event. So every actualization has alternative possibilities that have not been actualized, so that are negated by what is actualized. But not all of these are necessarily relevant. So it's in the aesthetic achievement that this negation becomes relevant, or rather the other way around. It is when this negation is relevant that you have the aesthetic achievement. So Whitehead's first reference to the Great Refusal in science in the modern world refers, as Dante did, to the small-mindedness, you could call it an intellectual viltade, the precipitation towards summary answers when confronted notably with the status of the enduring stability of the order of nature. Why are things stable in nature? Why do things have a consistency that remains? Why? We don't know why, actually. And we don't know, and rather than saying we don't know, it is the jumping to conclusions, it's the inability to live with the not knowing the answer to this that is the first refusal in a negative sense. And I quote Whitehead here, there is the summary answer, so the answer to the question, why are there things that subsist? There is a summary answer which refers nature to some greater reality standing behind it. Jumping to the easy assumption that there is an ultimate reality which in some unexplained way is to be appealed to for the removal of perplexity, and which constitutes the great refusal of rationality to assert its rights. So what you have to understand is the rationality asserting its rights here is the right to perplexity. You're allowed to be perplexed and to find things complex and not to jump to conclusions. But this is not the only way that he thinks about refusal in the negative sense. So this would be a kind of mystical jumping to conclusions, a flight into meaning. There's God or there's whatever reasons why there is a substantial reality. Whitehead's critique is he's a mathematician, logician. He was at the top of his game in the developments of quantum theory at his time and in the kind of debates around the foundation of mathematics. So there's something else that is at stake that goes more deeply into the business of reason, trying to establish its own compass, if you like. So his critique encompasses in equal measure what he calls the intolerant use of abstraction in modern science. And this egregiously confines knowledge to only certain types of facts, facts that are abstracted from the complete circumstances in which they occur. So science, if you like, in this restrictive mode that Whitehead doesn't want, only acknowledges certain types of facts and decides that everything else has no place in reality, is only, fancy. And this refusal corresponds to the abdication for Whitehead, the abdication of reason's audacity in its ultimate request for meanings and for coherence of thought. So really what this is about is he's saying the aesthetic reality that artists and poets speak to us about, if they can't be encompassed by science, it's not because they're not real or secondary qualities, if you like. It's because scientific reasoning has accepted a stipulation, has kind of capitulated before a dogma that the only things that are real are the things that we can explain, according to the dogma of the day. So this is a quotation from Whitehead again. The success of their ultimate ideas of modern science confirmed scientists in their refusal to modify them as the result of an inquiry into their rationality. So he says this way of doing science is not rational. But scientists said, yes, it is rational because look, all the successes that we have with physics and mathematics, and this is, we're totally right with this. So every philosophy was bound in some way or other to swallow them whole. Thought is abstract, and the intolerant use of abstractions is the major vice of the intellect. So how do you recover aesthetic truths, not as the other of reason, but as an emancipation of reason? So to this apparent foolishness, Whitehead objects the historical evidence that shows that almost all really new ideas have a certain aspect of foolishness when they are first produced. So the Romantic poets who experience a moral repulsion at intolerant abstraction because what it leaves out compromises everything that is most important to the poetic rendering of concrete experience. So there's a kind of unwillingness to sacrifice to a dogma of reason everything that is meaningful to us. So this second refusal now, this is the poets refusing the dogma of science. The second refusal now encompasses a hitherto ignored halo of possibilities, irreducible to established facts, and that is nevertheless both fully within the realm of reason and of the event. In fact, without it, the event would be devoid of both value and signification. So it's the second great refusal is asserting the exercise of its full rights, reason asserting its full rights, which mean reabsorbing value and signification in reason. So the second great refusal does imply an affirmation, which is the affirmation of value. In the first refusal, we had a simplistic negation of what was paradoxically fixed to a dogged affirmation of what is given in empirical reality. So this was a dogma. The only thing that is given is primary substances or qualities. This is the sense in which Whitehead critiques 3 centuries of scientific materialism as an obstinate limitation to an ontology of the given and as an idolatry of the matter of fact. The second refusal, and now I'm coming to a close with this, and then we can start discussing, or I can show you more things from the PowerPoint. The second refusal, contrary to the first, relies on an understanding of negation, not only as that which logically enables affirmation. So every affirmation implies negation, but a negation that is more fundamentally constitutive of actual reality. Its speculative remit is one in which not all that is real is given in actuality. So reality is greater than actuality. It encompasses also the possible, which is not actual. Yet what is given necessarily also implies what is negated. So what is given has the halo of negated possibility. Reality is only actualized in relation to 2 possibilities that participate of necessity in actual reality, even and sometimes especially as excluded from actualization. Whitehead clearly endorses the Romantic poets for their intuitive refusal to bow to modern science's rigid abstractions, the refusal of modern science's own refusal to encompass the aesthetic dimension of actuality within scientific rationality. But it is not feeling that must emancipate itself from reason, it is reason that must recover its aesthetic dimension. So what is an event for Whitehead? An event where a reality is actualized. The event for Whitehead necessarily partakes in a system of possibility that is more complex than pure affirmation and that exceeds the status quo of the established fact. And so I give you a last example, and then it's this, and then I'll come to a close with this, and we can start the discussion. To make Whitehead's sophisticated account of abstraction and concretization more tangible, I use the example of 2 chess players. This is how I try to explain this to myself. At the start of a game, all possible combinations of sequences of moves, given the rules of the game, are extant. Prior to the actual occurrence of the first move by the first player, the set of all possible sequences of moves is what constitutes the realm of alternatives that mutually determine one another. So each move hangs together in an interrelated web of interdetermination with the others. If you make one move, you make other moves impossible. The first move is contingent with respect to the set of all possibilities. So any move given within the rules of the game are possible, but only for the first move. Having actualized one possibility, this move then determines it as true. So this only one move has been actualized and is true of the actual occasion. And all other possible first moves are now categorically untrue. So they haven't occurred in the first move. They're untrue for the first move. The first move thereby partially determines the relation of the event with the realm of possibility. By eliminating all other possible first moves from this game, and for each negated first move, also the panoply of their possible subsequent sequences. All this is an entire region in the realm of interconnected alternatives that has been demoted to the status of excluded from actualization in the event. So we could say of this first move that it brings about what Whitehead calls the truth that some propositions respecting this actual occasion are untrue. So this is just to illuminate this really dense and difficult quote from before. The player now envisages an evolving set of possibilities. With each move, a pattern of possible sequences of moves contrasting true and untrue. And each move produced as true vibrates, this is the word that Isabel Stengers uses, vibrates with the great refusal of everything that inseparably will have been produced as untrue. So everything that is actualized makes this realm of possibility vibrate through the consequences that it kind of distributes through the realm of the possible. Every actual move is thus informed by this evolving complex of possibilities and its shifting pattern of true and untrue propositions. It is like a spotlight that actualizes only one possibility and therefore rearticulates the full sweep of possible sequences, redistributing the status and modality of each position in the constellation of possible moves. The game of chess thus consists in navigating this changing fugue of possible sequences, respecting and anticipating the evolving hierarchies between actual and possible, which like a kaleidoscope transform the pattern of true and untrue propositions. The game of chess thus constitutes an event in which the actual is intrinsically wedded to an ideal realm. So this ideal realm is the realm of possibilities. And without the ideal realm of possibilities, there is no game of chess. And without it, the moves in the chess game would be devoid of any significance. So the reality of the moves of the chess game, of the actualized moves, is intrinsically linked to what is not actualized, to what is ideal, to what is the realm of the possible. It's not just fancy, it's not just idealism, it is something that is intrinsically interconnected with actual reality. Each move highlights the actual as a limitation of possibility, and hence as the negation that this limitation necessarily implies. It is by virtue of this negation that each move may bring forth the value of its game. So what is a great game of chess? What is a great move? A great move is one that is decisive in proportion to the importance for it of its untrue propositions. It is one that briefly innervates this realm of possibilities such that the refused alternatives scintillate with significance. While negation is ubiquitous with regard to the actualization of possibility, every actualization negates a possibility that hasn't been actualized. A move in the chess game is only great when the negation it implies highlights the significance of its actualization as an achievement that manifests itself in an aesthetic value. And we can speak in this case of the refusal as giving rise to aesthetic value. So in the second sense, and then I'll close, in the second sense of the refusal, negation coincides with the emergence of value and the disclosure of the event's aesthetic dimension. The refusal is great in proportion to the significance of a possibility to the event. In this case, the negation of what could have been a moment of inattention that would have triggered a cascade of moves, including the possible victory of the opponent. One that has been determined as categorically untrue and as highly significant for the event. Whitehead thus tethers the emergence of value and the disclosure of the event's aesthetic dimension to this speculative horizon of possibility that far outstrips both that of established facts, which he calls the meager meal of the unimaginative empiricist, and also of what he calls the intolerant abstractions of modern science. So I will stop sharing. Oh, Don't tell me I wasn't sharing. I was sharing, right?
Yes.
Ah, yeah, good. Okay. I think by coming back to the page, I just closed the sharing. Now, I could go back to the PowerPoint, but it's late and I want to hear from you all now. I still have lots of things I wanted to talk about. Germany, especially the number of people whose shows have been cancelled, the controversies around it, prizes that have been cancelled, professorships that have been cancelled, the number of people who have spoken up, and the shocking absence of philosophers. Very, very few philosophers have spoken up. Zizek has famously, he made a big splash when he came to Frankfurt Book Fair in the autumn of 2023 and put his foot in it. And then subsequently, he talks so much that he can never make everybody happy. But at least he spoke up. The only other philosopher I know of who spoke up was Nancy Fraser, whose professorship was revoked in Cologne. She had a visiting professorship there. And Habermas spoke up, and he wrote a letter together with other German philosophers that was a kind of denial that what Israel was undertaking in Gaza would constitute something like a genocide. It was written right at the beginning, so it was, I think, also a form of wishful thinking, hoping that it wouldn't eventually amount to this. But it was a letter that I read and I felt was what was shockingly absent from it was any form of empathy and understanding for the civilian population. Not only in Gaza, also the West Bank, where hundreds of people have been killed also in the meantime. So, I mean, we can go back to that later with more examples, but I don't know if I managed to bridge this introduction to philosophy, which for me started by being intrinsically wedded to life, the fact that philosophy has consequences, that it implies decisions and negations that comprise vital truths as much as aesthetic achievements, and to kind of situate this in the times that we are living, and the difficulty for me of wading into this terrain as with a desire to reclaim the means of complexity. And I don't know, I think this is the time probably to hand over to you all to, I don't know if you like, those who haven't, you're welcome to put your cameras on, jump right in. I would suggest we have a discussion as long as you want, then a little break, and then we'll come back and do introductions and a round of introductions and talk about the essays. Loretta.
Yeah, hello Cécile, hello everyone. I want first to thank you for the magnificent presentation and paper about the variations. So, because from a deep personal perspective too, so by some godly miracle or a nerdy coincidence, I was really in need to read something comforting like that. Because in fact, and, I will try to be brief. It's this commentary is also a reaction to this feeling of vertigo, panic, and horror that a lot of people who live in I mean some majority Muslim countries are feeling, because we are too living in a neutrality, a passivity. So we saw, for example, the king of Jordan with Trump, and we can mention also a lot of communication between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of my country and America and Israel, and all the consequences of it. So people like me are feeling like some intellectual cowards. So, um, so I tried to make sense of what you said about the refuse from Dante's point of view, and he made me think about uh, uh, a kind of path to contextualize this reading to this. Arab, I mean, even some Moroccan parties and some Moroccan leaders say, no, we're not even Arabs, so we don't care about the Middle East. We are Amazigh, we are that, we are that. So it's really frustrating. So I tried to link this Dante's view to catabasis, which we can find in a well-known work of literature of the 11th century, that of Abi Ala al-Ma'arri. So this poet, one of the most ambivalent figures of Arabic literature. So I mean, he got smallpox when he was a kid and become blind. He was a vegan, anti-natalist. So all the woes for a Muslim, he had that. So to me, he was a kind of a revolutionary writer. And I mean, there is a consensus between scholars that he was an atheist and he refused all religions. So he had that cheap ticket to decapitation. So, so in his book called Risala al-Ghufran, the Epistle for Forgiveness, which is a response to a letter that a poet called Al-Qarih sent him. And that poet was complaining about the times of corruption. And he told him that those times of corruption, the corruption of the world, so this rotten of this our society is caused by the heretics. So the poets, the great minds of our generations are heretics. So they don't believe in God. So now we're living in the reckoning. God is taking his revenge. So Abu Ala al-Ma'ri wrote this magnificent epistle. And he was a really tricky man, like a man of cunning and stuff. And first, when you read the epistle, you say it is in harmony with the sayings of the true religion. He's a good Muslim, Abu Ala. He will go to paradise, etc. But like people in power and theologians start asking questions. How can a nobody, a blind man, writes and describe paradise and hell? By which authority? So in that book, he even ironized the daughter of the prophet in one of the scenes. So it was um, so um, with no regard to the interpretations, etc. There is a paragraph that grabbed my attention and that I remembered when I read your article. And this paragraph, he talked about Iblis, Satan. Satan is the one who refused to bow to Allah. So Allah says in the Quran, he's talking about Satan, and so God said to the angels, prostrate before Adam. So they prostrated, except for Iblis. And God says literally, he refused and was arrogant and became of the disbelievers. So Satan, this mysterious figure, so he's a real plot hole in the history of monotheistic religions. For example,
Another great refusal.
yeah. So, for example, Spinoza asks who deceived Satan himself to become arrogant? If Satan deceived humans, so who deceived Satan? So, this poet, Abu Ala, depicts Satan as a rebel chained in hell. And the same poet, Al-Qarih, Ibn Al-Qarih, that one who sent Abi Ala the letter complaining about the heretics, he was a poet of court. So, he was a neutral coward who spent his life smoothing to all the nobles of Middle East and even North Africa. So he sees Satan and cry, thank to God who has got the better of you, you enemy of God. So Satan asks, who the hell is this man? So the poet answers, I'm Al-Qarih, I'm Ibn Al-Qarih. I was a man, this is Abi Ala talking. I was a man of letters by profession, by which I tried to win the favors of rulers. So Satan answers this man, and by the following. He says, a bad profession indeed. It's a slippery business. Many like you have gone to perdition because of it. Then he inquires about another heretic poet of the Islamic tradition, that Bashar ibn Burd. And Satan says that I owe Bashar something that I do not owe any other son of Adam. He, unlike all other poets, preferred me to Adam for saying, and this is a real poem of Ibn Burd, where he says, Satan is better than your father, Adam. You wicked people understand this well. His element is fire, and Adam is of mud. Mud will never rise as high as fire. And Satan adds, in the end, he spoke the truth, but those who speak the truth will always be hated. And after that, the scene continues. Ibn Qarih sees Bashar tortured in hell. But what is intriguing about Abi Ala is even in hell, no one of those people is asking for forgiveness. They assume what they did in earth.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
and even Satan himself goes to ask this Ibn Qarih for a favor. And Ibn Qarih says, Allah said that you will ask me for a favor. I'm not bringing you water nor wine. And Satan says, I'm not asking you for wine nor water, but I'm inquiring about the homosexuals in paradise. Is homosexuality allowed in paradise? And if it is so, why God punished the lovers of earth? So it is really intriguing, and
It's which century was this written in?
the 11th century.
Oh my goodness, I would like you to maybe later to put the references in the chat, because it sounds like a prototype almost of the Divine Comedy, because one of the reasons why the shade of the Great Refusal and all these cowards who run after in fact, those who run after the banner of conformity has a great phrase for it. He says they are damn, now I don't know it by heart anymore, but it's basically you would have never imagined that so many people had died. So the great majority of people run after the banner of conformity into the antechamber of hell. And the reason why they're not allowed in, obviously they can't go to heaven because they haven't committed a good deed. And they also can't go to hell, but why? They can't go to hell because otherwise the evil people in hell would be proud of their evil deeds, because at least they did something bad and they affirmed something bad, whereas the people in the antechamber of hell are simply saying neither yes nor no, neither good nor bad, and they try to pull themselves out of the affair like this, but they're not forgiven by Dante.
Yeah. And so I thought it really resonates with the context and this making Satan this figure of a woke figure of
Yeah,
Islam.
I would like you please
Uh,
to put the references in the chat also for the others. Frida, go ahead, please.
Hi. I think I wanted to, also ask you, maybe you are aware of this, but I am very, very shocked about the anti-Deutsch in Germany. Like, I think this is a phenomena that goes beyond the refusal, because, as you say, I think, running for conformity is something that maybe a lot of us can we understand or empathize with, but I was one of the artists who was like canceled in Germany, like famously canceled. And I think, the amount of bullying and persecution that I suffer was like kind of insane, but also from the woke people, from the left people, right? Because the anti-Deutsch is basically people from the left who kind of say that, of course, we are leftists, we are against state nations, except for Israel. We are, pro everything that's woke, but on top of everything, we cannot criticize Israel. And they're completely full-on Zionist. And I also remember they use a lot of these scholars, which in the like leftist circles in Berlin were like really important, like Eva Ilutz. For example, she's like an Israeli sociologist, but she has written a lot of books, and she recently wrote a text that is saying basically that it's very funny how she starts, because she starts like with such a right-wing phrase, like in the Olympics of victimhood, you know, like yeah, like we don't understand who to fight for, right? Like, should we fight for Black people? Should we fight for trans people? Should we fight for LGBTQ people? And she was just like, this is also confusing. And I think her thesis at the end is just to say, but the Jewish people are like the biggest victims, and that's why we should advocate for them in any sense or form. And I mean, I'm just interested in this kind of phenomena where Zionism kind of like penetrates, you know, left or movements who praise themselves to be allies of post-coloniality. Or, I mean, there's no way you can understand post-coloniality if you don't understand genocide, right? Or if you don't understand ethnic cleansing, or I mean, there's no way. I mean, you need to understand these things to understand the present, to understand what happened in the colonial times. And all of these circles of thought, and I studied in Germany, so, and then to see all of these people just turning the coin completely. Like, if all of that we have studied had no more value in the face of criticism to the state of Israel. I don't know if you...
No, I know. And I just wanted to know from you, when you say, did you say anti-Deutsch?
Yeah.
What did you mean by anti-Deutsch? Because, for example, the Green are in government and they're not anti-Deutsch, so to speak, as a kind of government party.
Well, it's a leftist
I think I know what you mean, and
Yeah.
probably fall a little bit in that category for reasons I can explain, but I wanted to explain.
Yeah, I think they define themselves like that, like we are anti-Deutsch, which means that they are a part of the leftist movement, but that are, in simplistic terms, Zionists, which means they don't they deny the idea of Germany. You know, they hate the the state nation of Germany. They really understand the history of Germany. They want to kind of separate themselves from the fascists in the way of saying, like, no, we are embarrassed of being Germans.
Yeah,
like, we are very aware of our history. And yeah, I mean, but at the same time, they're obviously completely, in favor of Zionism and genocidal denial.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things happening at the same time in what you're saying. I think one thing I might respond to is that I grew up with my grandparents were the silent generation. I will never know what they did, experienced, went through. I knew them as loving grandparents, and I did ask once and was told that we don't talk to children about this. I mean, I must have been, I don't know, roughly 12 or 10 or something. And my parents' generation, although my mother is French, it's a slightly different story, were the ones who, with a very strong American influence, were the executors of a program, in the good sense, executors, I feel like, of denazifying Germany. I don't know if you read the article by Mishra that is in the reading list, you'll see that it's hauntingly not complete as a job. But certainly the idea was to extirpate from the German education system any sense of the kind of adulation of hierarchy and authority, to instill a sense of democracy, to you say do and not sie to your teachers. You, from the youngest age, you have pupils having a kind of democratic representation of students who practice democracy. And in fact, when I went to move to France and switched from the German to the French school system, I was shocked as I discovered how German I was through this imprint, if you like, by seeing how much the French education system is based on the adulation of authority and hierarchy. Emanuele Coccia is a very interesting Italian philosopher who, I think he wrote a piece recently about this, about the hierarchy of angels and how in the Middle Ages this has kind of imprinted itself on the university system, the adulation of hierarchy. But so part of this denazification also meant that certainly for someone with a vivid imagination like myself, I experienced my education like a clockwork orange. So when I was 12, this is the part, the even more personal part that I left out of the presentation aspects of it. Shutters were pulled down and we got the projections of the judgments of Nuremberg. And I saw all the horrors that people who haven't had this education, that cannot have this conversation properly. I hardly dare, but it's probably the right place also to mention this. I will never, I'm forever haunted by the idea that someone made lampshades from human skin, scientific experiments on human beings. I have a clockwork orange. So I grew up as one of these anti-Deutsch in the sense that if I saw a German flag, I would have an impulse to vomit.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is no doubt one of the reasons why I left Germany as well. So this is also why it is so incredibly traumatic for me. I mean, partly perhaps my reaction is different because I left Germany. And so there is a kind of continuation of this education that didn't happen for me, that would have happened had I been there in my peer group, in my generation that has been imprinted like this. And when the first demonstrations happened in London after the Hamas attack, and it was beginning to become evident that the civilian population was not going to be spared in Gaza and also in the West Bank to a large extent, I went with Ashjan Ajour, who's going to speak in one of the sessions here, who I had actually seen again after, we had a very nice reunion in the summer of 2023. We talked about life, about the ideas of sacrifice, all sorts of things. And just after we left each other, I think a month and a half later, the Hamas attack happened and all the rest of it unfolded. So I went to this demonstration thinking, well, surely people are not questioning the right of Israel to exist. And I just realized the extent to which the formatting of this is something so profoundly ingrained that when I went to the demonstration and realized, and there were peaceful demonstrations, there were a great diversity of people with different claims, elderly British people, families with children, various labor and Jewish associations of various different denominations of the Jewish faith to Muslim associations from different countries. There was such a big medley of people there with different points of view. But I was, if you like, initiated to the idea that the legitimacy of Israel with the boundaries to which it lays claim, and you can see from some of the Netanyahu showing himself on television with pictures of kind of greater Israel. So I was not aware of the fact that there was an issue with the legitimacy of that. And not only was I not aware, my imprinting was so that I thought, blimey, wow, what have I gotten myself into? I felt a vertigo, like Loretta was saying. And I so terrified of getting it wrong, of sliding on the side of anti-Semitism as well. And so there's a kind of anti-German thing that often people from other countries tell me, well, really, you have to understand, the Germans were not all bad people. And it's like, oh, okay, I kind of understand. I kind of don't understand. I'm not entirely sure what I understand anymore or not. But also I live in the UK, in a country where the other thing I was going to share with you was this: what are public apologies for? This was an article from a few years after. Anyway, I won't go into detail too much. I live in a country where like France also, the reckoning with the colonial past means don't make too many concessions, don't apologize, don't admit guilt. So also my French family, parts of which were Pieds Noirs that came from Algeria, there's a whole obnubilation of not confronting the past. That isn't what happened in Germany. We did confront the past. We did produce a generation like my own that confronting a past like this makes you puke when you see a German flag. And yet I'm like, I think I was so gobsmacked that it's the left that is denying a genocide in front of them as it happens. I do not understand it. To be honest, I'm trying to stay rational and approach this from kind of try and marry this with a philosophical prism that can give us a handle rather than just being emotional. But I can't hide the fact that I'm super emotional about this. I'm also quite confused, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, for me, it's insane because I've been bullied in so many ways, like people telling me like you don't understand because you didn't live in Germany. And I mean, my grandfather, you know, escaped the Holocaust and moved to Mexico. That's the only reason I'm Mexican, you know, like he lived in a Mexican community. And when I asked my mother, what did my grandfather told you about Germany? And my mother told me like, he never told me anything. The only thing that he told me is like, Mexico is the best country in the world because here you don't walk on the bodies of your friends and families. I went back to Germany and I don't have a single relative. They were all killed. I mean, that's why I could, you know, move to Germany, get like a German passport because of this Jewish heritage. And it's just so crazy that they don't, that you go and, for example, you know, squatted houses where I used to go when I was younger. And then they're full of Israeli flags, like all of the punk spaces, you know, punk anarchy, like full of stickers, graffiti, and full of Israeli flags. I mean, this is something I cannot cope. This is something I cannot, you know, here it's a different story. In Mexico is very pro-Palestine. Zapatista movement is the first one and is like the one that's always in every single march, like in front, you know, fighting for the Palestinian rights. I think because we have a much more reconciliating history with indigenous genocide, for us it's also easy to understand what's going on. But I just feel that everybody is so complacent in Germany. I mean, my friends, my teachers, every teacher I respected, you know, all these white guys that always were like, oh, I am a institutional critique person, and nobody is talking. Nobody is also trying to unify, you know. I mean, I think of thinking as a unifying force, and nobody is trying to create any form of unity, just to say like, okay, let's unify these two forces, and you know, even like let's come to a middle place. Like this is not happening. I'm just like, I feel like we are not thinking. We're like paralyzed. We are afraid. We are confirming. It's just like, I mean, I think I could never go back to Germany again. In my, like, I'm so traumatized in a way.
Well, I'm also thinking whether they will let me go back. When I go back, I always at the passport control, I kind of think maybe they will say, "What did you post on Twitter?" And I'm always careful. I think, although I'm terrified of getting it wrong, of trying to say it is the issue cannot be that it's not allowed to talk of the humanity and individuality of human beings, civilian populations that are being massacred. It doesn't, I cannot understand why acknowledging this reality would, the terror in me, I still feel the terror that I would inadvertently become an anti-Semite. Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, what you're describing, to be honest, is deeper and worse than what I experienced, because the people I mentioned earlier were people, you know, from that I've known when I was a child, and we were teenagers, and they've gone into all walks of life and don't necessarily have anything to do with writing or with art or anything like that. So they have the opinion that they get from mainstream media or from whatever algorithm has trained their social media streams. It's a feeling like this, but I did, you know, I can see what the government is saying. I didn't realize the extent to which this was, yeah, hard to understand phenomenon also in alternative movements. Georgia.
This is a question to you, and I suppose anyone else in the group. Do you think that this refusal to question anything in Germany, or the refusal to question the dogma on Israel, do you think this is part of a wider crisis of refusal in Europe that's fueling the rise of the right? That like we're all moving into the antechamber of hell? And what would be the reason for that?
That's really difficult. A Jewish friend of mine recently, I didn't know what his view was on this, and because we don't have usually political discussions, I kind of treaded lightly on this. And he brought up the topic of the right wing and said, look, there he makes the difference between the right. When I say right wing, I mean parties that have links with neo-fascist groups. Okay, I don't mean mainstream right wing party. Whatever is happening to them is another story, that's also complicated in its own right. What I mean right wing definition, people who have members in their parties that have explicit links with or use the language of fascism or neo-right-wing, neo-Nazi movements. And so he was saying, yeah, these right-wing movements, Le Pen in France, AfD in Germany, and so forth, he makes a difference that they're not people who discriminate on the basis of race. They don't say you are a bad human being because you're the wrong race. They make the difference on the basis of a fight of civilizations. So we don't want you, presumably, I interpreted that what he was saying was to do with Muslims. He was saying this is about people coming who want to destroy your culture. And I was also very struck to think how, this is another thing, it's an aporia for me, how after a history like this, there can be any trust towards right-wing movements in the West that have had a history like this. It defies me utterly. And at the same time, you can also see the parallelism, the idea that this is what Mishra describes really in incredibly strong terms in his article, the idea that there are resonances in terms of nationalism and a kind of ethnocentricity of not just wanting a nation, but wanting a nation that is only for a certain type of people. Yeah, Lais, go ahead.
I think it's happening across the world. In Brazil, at least I can say for Brazilian perspective, the right wing, the traditional or the mainstream right wing, they're just losing their makeup. And then you can see them for who they really are, right? And they are just a repetition of what it is with the fascist movements and everything. I was while Frida and you were talking about this and read that excerpt, I was thinking about this phrase from Keiju on resistance that let me just say it. If power resolves itself in repetition, pleasure finds itself in invention. And they're constantly repeating themselves through these discourses and these nationalist or whatever civilizational discourses, while there are other solutions. You can refuse this refusal, and it's just you can't really understand when everyone realized, or probably nobody realized it yet, but they're getting there to realize that these right wings, they're just repeating themselves in this discourse of just very polished faces, and then when things get ugly, they will just choose their sides, and you know who they are. And the problem for me is with the leftists or whoever finds themselves in this spectrum of a more social approach, that they find themselves just silent because they don't really know where they stand. And because the right wing or the fascist, they really know who they are. We are lost in this confusion, and this is what is most
I don't know if
striking.
they really know what they are, because what I'm finding is that people who haven't thought about this actively and who are not in a kind of active in a kind of cultural environment or dealing with discourses, who find themselves in times of uncertainty, economic uncertainty, climate uncertainty, maybe age, whatever. And what I've heard so many times now from people who are, who I've known all my life, is the idea that a party like Le Pen, a party like the AfD, I would imagine, I don't know if it's the same in Brazil, but because it was really bit more stark, but the idea that they're not really right-wing, that there's something new, they're not racist, they're not, they just want law and order or something like this. And it sounds, I think I would be disingenuous if I said it was insincere. I think people want to believe, a lot of people, 20% of people in Germany are polling for the AfD. Marine Le Pen in France has the highest potential satisfaction ranking for a future prime minister. And I know that a lot of people, including, I mean, there's Jewish people voting for them, there's North African people voting for them, under the idea that this marketing, this rebranding of the right wing to say we're neither, even the father of Marine Le Pen said, neither left nor right. It's as if there could be an alternative to politics as usual, and it has traction. It has traction because there's an idea that these parties have evolved from their base, that they are no longer fascists, that they have left the bad dream of all these horrible things that happened in the past. It's like a bad dream. It's like it's distant from us now. I think there's something sincere in the self-deception. If you know what I mean. I think there is an element of self-deception, but it isn't entirely conscious. Georgia.
Oh, I'm not. I changed my mind. I'm not sure if what I have to. I'm not sure if what I have to contribute is interesting or important. So let's go to Nicolas.
Nicolas, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to say that I'm not sure if that's like, I wouldn't brand it as self-deception, because I think that there is like machinery of branding Israel as a woke state. They have like all of these branding around veganism, around feminism, around queerness, and they try to use that to like wash out the state in order to brand it as appealable for leftist community. So there's like a level where, and for me, like when thinking about Israel, that's really important. One has to like take a stand where many of the actors in the Israeli state know what they are doing in order to make themselves comprehensible and defendable by others, either right wing or left wing. They are always like going through this. They're taking stands that like are compatible and defendable from both right and left wing stands of the political spectrum. So I'm just not sure, like, to read like this idea of Zionist leftist being like confused or not being able to take a stand on it. I think there is like a more thought out way of approaching that.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood exactly. Can you rephrase it slightly for me?
Yes, I'm going to try. I'm thinking about like I'm thinking about this book, Anthony Lowenstein's The Palestine Laboratory. There's some chapters where he talks about how the Israeli state goes through queer agendas, feminist agendas, environmentalist agendas, vegan agendas, animalist agendas, and they use those agendas to make themselves
like attractive as a liberal,
yes,
as a defender of
attractive.
liberal values in the Middle East.
Yeah. So I think that there's like a way where like these ideas of seeing Israeli state as Zionist leftist as confused, as no knowing what they're doing. I don't buy it in a way, because I think that there is like a really clear out really mindful strategy to make the Israeli state comprehensible from a left-wing political perspective. So I think that the way that
Are these things, do you think that the current government, which appears from the outside at least extremely conservative, do they promote these kinds of views, or do you think this is a reflection of the fact that Israel also has a very diverse and liberal for a segment of the population and not liberal for the Palestinians?
I think they do from the state end of the
It would be good to hear from someone perhaps who has a kind of inside perspective on
I
this.
can say from the news that came to Brazil in terms of for example, the Jewish Zionists that I know, and people who are Jewish but they are not Zionists at all. And the strategy, I think I agree with Nicolas in that sense, because one of the first arguments that will come in the afterwards of the attack in October was that they're trying to limit our freedom. And then they bring the examples that gay people, LGBT community are free to walk through Israel and they would be assassinated if they were in Palestine, those kind of things. These were arguments to just try to bring the LGBT community and this left identitary community or
Claim
whatever.
it as a kind of liberal.
Claiming exactly that Israel was a land of freedom amid a just very, retrograde or retrograde civilization, and that they were the real civilization in that territory, and this is very disturbing. And I'm just glad that a lot of other people, like Jewish people, they're not Zionists, they would just come and go, hey, it's not like that. It's not like that at all. And they're just trying to use that as a marketing stratagem, to bring people to have more empathy or they're just trying to bring people to their side, and using this identitary politics as a weapon to criticize or even dehumanize the Palestinians, as if they would dehumanize the LGBT community. And this is very disturbing. I have a friend, she's an Ashkenazi Jewish. Her family came from Russia in that period, in the beginning of the 20th century. And she's like, I can't believe how people just, it was a very traumatizing period in the aftermath of the World War II. But they're just trying to create a solution that would just place Europe as providing a resolution from the problem that they created themselves, and then they just moved the problem to somewhere else. And how many Jews just fell for that narrative, and that her family just never fell for that, because she was like, Jews, like my family and a lot of other civilizations, they were nomad. They were constantly flying, conflicts and civilization. There were across history, there were a lot of persecution against them. So we became nomads. We know our own identity. We are not bound to a territory, and we don't need to create a territory in a place where there are other people living there for centuries, just because we need to claim it as our own to regain our own humanity, And she's very clear about that. And and that was something that was like, yeah, and then when you see all the Jewish movements across the world, in US, there's this large movement of Jewish Voice for Peace. And it's just, how do they not why are they're not heard? Because they have a voice and they're trying to voice against this genocide, and they're just not heard at all by the system, the media system, the mainstream. It's crazy.
Maybe we can have Galit to respond to this. And then Frida.
Okay. Yeah, you asked
Sorry,
for
Galit had
insight.
her hand up first and then put it down again, and then maybe Frida afterwards, if it's okay. Galit, please go ahead. And hello.
Okay, so hello. You asked for inside voice, so maybe I can say just a few things. There is no master plan. between the left and right, and there is no master plan for Israel. And I think there is no master plan anywhere. So if we think about Israel, so till 87, it was considered labor or left or socialist or the heritage. And if you look at the past, it was the settlements, the state of Israel, everything made by the liberal, not by the right. Okay, so there is not kind of division that we can say, Israel tried, the state tried to, of course, the state tried to um, pink wash or other stuff, but it's not in the core. We can say that Menachem Begin made a peace treaty with Egypt, so it was not the left; it was the other party. So I think like our division between left and right, we have something very wrong today. Looking at it, even about the traditional left and right in the way that we perceive what's happening now. This is just, I will not continue to this direction to explain, but I think we need to be very cautious when we talk about left and right and the way that we understand the way they are operating today. But there is something else in this situation that we need to notice, that everything or most of the institutes that built after the Second World War are now under attack. It's been human rights, it's all of them. Basically the US aid. So this is, I think, something we need to notice with the global kind of movement and what's happening in the genocide in Gaza. I would say ethnocide. So we'll keep it for the next time, but just to mention, I think this is something that we need to be very cautious about. Thank you.
Yes,
It was fascinating to listen to you all. Thank you.
No, also thank you, Galit. Is exactly my feeling, because if you like, I hope that this seminar will allow us to eke out the complexity of it. In Germany, like Frida was saying earlier, it's the left, notably in the government, that has quite authoritarian, draconian measures in place to stop people from, this is what I had the PowerPoint full of, all the people that have been, Greta Thunberg nearly had was forbidden to come to Germany. Varoufakis, the former Greek finance minister, was forbidden to come. I mean, this is the left. Whereas on the right, you have the head of the AFD is a gay woman married to a Sri Lankan woman, and it's like my head is spinning a little bit, although I also at the same time understand that there is an element of situating yourself within discourse, and the right does it. I mean, there is someone called Pierre Milza, a French historian of fascism. He was a specialist of Mussolini. He wrote a book shortly before he died called Europe in Black Shirts. And it was about the resurgence of neo-Nazi groups and extreme right-wing movements in Germany. And part of what he discusses there is the very interesting prehistory to fascism and right-wing movements, the connections. Anyway, we'll get into this in another time perhaps, but it's not as straightforward as you think. And partly he goes into this idea of rebranding, the idea that radical neo-fascist movements at a certain moment in I can't remember, it was the 60s, 70s, understood that there wasn't an appetite among voters for the abolishing of democracy and for racist discourse. And so the idea, there was like a split away of a group of people who said, if you want to have traction in elections, you need to move your discourse to the center ground. And so Marine Le Pen split from her father. The AFD, likewise, they have a kind of marketing idea, the idea that this Weidel is the baby face of the AFD that makes it like a puppy, who could be dangerous with a face like that, and she's gay and she's a woman and everything you want. That there is an element here of ticking boxes of liberalism that you would have dissociated from authoritarian fascist movements in the past. So acknowledging this, analyzing it in detail, while at the same time acknowledging that each country has its own complex makeup. I noticed, for instance, that the Haaretz in Israel has published things that they would have probably been illegal to publish in Germany. So it's a strange world that we're living in, where nothing is quite what it seems, and there seems to be a lot of trapdoors for additional dimensions to the problems, but also to the solutions, because in a way, this is what I want to steer towards, and I could and I couldn't. I think Whitehead will help me to do it, but there's so much negativity in all this that it's hard to look at what Whitehead called this halo of possibilities. There is a halo of possibilities, and it is not just static. It's not just there is the possibility of a two-state solution or of a one-state solution. There are so many steps, so many moves on this chessboard, and this is a chessboard whose rules are not all written and whose players are not all predefined. So I hope that eventually we can kind of recuperate the complexity of it, and at the same time steer it towards this halo of possibilities and the steps one can take, and the value that emerges from a refusal that is both brave and significant, if you like, the refusal of genocide to start with, perhaps. Frida.
I think it's also important to point out that I think a lot of these ideologies, for example, like any ideology can take from any movement. And I have the feeling I have experienced that with the LGBTQ community, which I'm a part of. And for example, I am a part of a group in Germany who's, Jewish Voices for Peace, but also queer Arabs against Zionism. And obviously, we are always attacked in the way lies also explain, like, oh, if you were in Palestine, you will be killed, la, 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 la. But on the other side, there is an organization in Germany from anti-Deutsch journalists that goes through all of our Instagrams, all of our likes. They have compiled PDFs of, 200 pages on my name, on Bassem's name, on Carrie's name, about what we liked, about what we post. And all of this is being sent to the Ausländerbehörde to point us out as radicals. And especially my trans Arab friends have been posted as radicals, and this is like also in a super transphobic way. And this thing can be used for both sides. On one side, it's been used by Israel to pinkwash their state, and on the other one is also weaponized against us to the state of Germany. So I guess this is, for me, this is also the complexity that now everything can be used to both sides' advantage.
And more than two sides, because in the US, Trump is stripping, I think, or has, I don't know if he's decided to do it yet, is stripping medical services, medical aid to trans people. There is also that element of putting people in harm's way because of an explicitly anti-woke agenda. So this is, it goes into so many different, I didn't realize it was so extreme in Germany.
It is really extreme in Germany, because it's so strange how they would persecute us also as people. Like, I'm an artist, I don't have a lot of power, and nevertheless they are going to extreme lengths to also take us to court. This is also, they also
you do have a lot of power, and the student demonstrations, especially in the United States, have shown this. And this was, I can say perhaps from my own experience, once in a concrete situation, an institutional situation, of having spoken up against an institutional consensus in a kind of institutional conflict situation, is that people who consolidate power around the preservation of reputation and the suppression of inconvenient facts coming out, they have a lot of power to enforce this, but they are both relying on the silent majority and afraid of the silent majority. And this silent majority is an incredible potential, because the few people who do speak up are so inconvenient because they may sway the silent majority. You never know. It's like a wind. You don't know in which direction it will go. So people are very afraid of artists speaking up, students speaking up. I think there's a kind of field of tension that means that a spark of opinion can be very powerful, actually. I think.
No. I mean, I think you're right. I just think like in the scope of the German society, I think, of course we do. Also, they're very afraid of us. Why they would then cancel us so extremely? I mean, obviously, I think there's like fear, and there's like, and I've been very like publicly always speaking out. But I just think that, yeah, it's insane. I never thought that I will have an organization literally harassing me for just.
And it's very frightening. I have to say that when an institution threatens you, it is a very frightening feeling, because it becomes very personal all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Reda, go ahead, please.
Yes, I just want to talk about this political spectrum from, I think, somehow from the other side, so from the Muslim countries. So I just want to make first a distinguish between the Sunni countries and the Shia countries. The Shia countries are supportive to the Palestinians, and the Sunni countries, for the Shias, for geopolitical reasons, for engagement, for whatever reason. But in the Sunni countries, there is not only a passivity, but I had this experience that I was invited as a speaker to this conference. I was invited by a professor I know, entitled International Law, something about from the Holocaust of Jews to the genocide of Palestinians, or something like that. So when I did go to this conference room, so I got the message in my phone, in my WhatsApp. So there is no sheets to to invite people. There was no invitation, no abstract in the faculty website. It was between us, between those people. I already know that the conference will take place. We were 20 people, four speakers, one Palestinian, and the 10 or 12 in the public. We know that because we invited them as we're friends. So, and when I thought about that from the perspective of this, or at least from the perspective of my country, Israel is not only sending the image of this woke country, but also it's really supportive to all kinds of eradications of minority. In Morocco, we have the problem of Western Sahara. We can't. You don't even allowed to think about the Western Sahara. You don't even have the right to say Western Sahara, or you will be imprisoned. It's a political crime to say Western Sahara in Morocco. You have to say the Moroccan Sahara. I had a lot of problems about that in publications and stuff. You have to say Moroccan Sahara. So Israel started to support the Moroccan Sahara from the Abraham Pacts and treaties. So everyone in the public opinion, when, for example, we see Greta Thunberg, lastly in Western Sahara. So a Moroccan, when he sees Greta Thunberg in Western Sahara, and at the same time sees Greta Thunberg supporting Palestinians, he says there is something wrong. So Israel is supportive to us, to our cause, and Greta Thunberg is in the enemy side. And also there is the question of monarchy. I got this answer from a lot of Israeli that we're not dealing with Moroccan people, we're dealing with the king of Morocco. So there is not even this scenario of discussion. And the third element is religion. It is mainly this Sunni Shia fight. So the Sunnis find alliance in Israel. So that explains this. It's not a support Israel, but rather a neutrality. They literally say nothing. They say, okay, we're trying to find an issue for this so-called conflict or whatever they say, but at my knowledge, nor Morocco, nor Jordan, nor any Sunni country said officially that what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. And when we did a spreadsheet about that in a conference, we
Oh, wow.
didn't find it in the faculty website. We did literally
It
avoid
disappeared.
live conference. Yeah, it disappeared. Even in the conference room, there was no spreadsheet because it had the name of genocide, but no one talked to us. Not the dean, not anyone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, you remind me of I recently saw this film, The Devil Inside, which is with Brad Pitt. He was playing very well, actually. He plays an IRA operative who goes to the US to do something with arms or whatever, and he arrives there, and the person who picks him up says, "Ah, yeah, you're from Ireland. Really, I'm Irish, but I don't really understand. I'm a bit confused about what's going on in Ireland." And Brad Pitt says to him, "Well, if you're not confused, you don't understand anything about the situation." And yeah, what you're describing, I have to say that speaking to Egyptian or Lebanese friends, my head is also humming with not the confusion about it. It's like an onion that has so many layers. It's quite difficult to get to grips with. But that was a very important contribution, Reda. Thank you. I have a suggestion. If we have a little bit of time left, I don't know how much in need of a little break you guys are. I would like to have also some time to do a quick introduction. That perhaps we don't have that much time, but just to say a few words, each of you, about yourself, maybe what background you're bringing to this, what you're hoping to get out of this, would be really nice to take it from here. And the thing about the essays that we can write it in an email later to get to not lose time here. How many people would like to go and grab a glass of water or tea or have 5-minute break? Or if you're all hardcore, we could just pull through and start with the short introductions. We don't have much time left. I think we have 20 minutes left, right?
We have 20 minutes left.
Yeah, of course. I will send Parham, I will send you my email address later. Anyway, you should probably have it on the news center as well, but I'll send it through later. So why don't we go? I don't know if you all have the screen in the same order as me. I have Reda at the top left. So because you last spoke, do you want to quickly introduce yourself and then it'd be really nice to hear everyone, also those who have stayed quiet.
So my name is Reda. I'm a certificate student at the New Center for Research and Practice. I hold a master's degree in geopolitics and international relations. So I started a PhD project, but I dropped it out in strategy and attrition and exhaustion strategy. So my interest is to try to read to give this perspective reading of the conduct of war, the rationale of war, the rationalities of war in the Arab countries from this perspective of how Arabs meet at first modernity, so the modern like Napoleon, and how they took it in their military apparatus and so on.
Wow, thank you, Reda. Lais, please.
My name is Lais. I'm Brazilian. I'm based in Rio right now. I'm a visual artist, but my master was in geography, in public policy, and specifically talking about housing and immigrants. I'm currently, most of my work is related to art in public space, and this relationship between the embodying the space and using it and claiming it. But what else? I'm here in this class mostly because of I didn't quite know the concept of the Great Refusal entirely, and I was interested in that, but also because of the contemporary issues that we're living, and how they are intertwined in a certain way. They're mixed among this complex. It is funny because one of the justifications for just to be silent is that it is complex. It is complex. Therefore, we should talk about it. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, and I think if possible, keep it complex. And while you were talking, I was also realizing, if anyone feels the need to stay quiet because perhaps they feel that there's a consensus forming, a certain way of talking about Israel or about the conflict or whatever, then just be assured that I would make absolutely sure that really everyone who wants to say how they view the situation, have a perspective also that differs or that they feel might be challenging is really welcome. Not only welcome, I would make sure that this conversation can happen in such a way that we can accommodate the complexity of the different perspectives. But Nicolas.
Hi, I am Nicolas. I am a philosopher based in Bogota, Colombia. My background is mostly on like philosophical problems around environmentalism and global warming. But I also like a lot like modern philosophy and philosophies of nature. I think that what got me into this seminar is that last year at magazine I run with some friends, we directed a reading group on Palestine. We tried to relate some issues about technology, about environment and animals, which are like the core themes of the magazine, with the genocidal and colonial violence in Palestine, like trying to do like this politicization of topics that sometimes can be seen as not political. So I just want to like nurture that interest through this seminar.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicolas. And yeah, I don't know if you've worked on the idea of the bifurcation of nature in Whitehead, but it's a very interesting, it's what underlies this idea of the Great Refusal, but I couldn't really go into it too much today. Galit, would you like to say a few words now? Or you prefer to do it when it's your session? If you're there, or maybe she's not just there at the moment. Georgia.
Hi, my name's Georgia. I'm originally from the UK, but I'm based in Mexico City. I've lived here for about 6 years now. I'm an artist, and I'm also a certificate student at the New Centre, in your program, Cécile, in art and curation.
Awesome.
So I initially came into this seminar because it's compulsory, but after reading,
oh, is it?
Yeah, well,
Craggy.
But after the big caveat, after reading your article and definitely sitting through the seminar, I am really excited to be here because I am, despite I found the initial blurb quite opaque, but then I read your article and I'm really excited by this wager that aesthetics can lead to an emancipation of reason as opposed to it being its binary, and it really, or like its opposition. And it really confirms that, because I have no background in philosophy at all. I'm a visual artist with an art degree. And it really confirms a lot of kind of rats that I smelt in some very sort of reductive discussions that are going on in the art world from perhaps both sides of the political spectrum. So that there is this very important complexity, but that shouldn't be at the expense of ethics or taking a position, which I think is also another really kind of major crisis, I think, as I like implied with my my question in like broader politics. So I am buzzing.
Oh God, I'm so glad to hear it, although I'm a little bit shocked that I'm involved in something compulsory.
Oh no, you just have to do a certain number of like credits from your
Okay.
from your program. So I mean,
Okay.
it's
But
fine. No,
I
it's
mean, part
great.
of I really love what you picked up on with the complexity and that despite the uncertainty shouldn't be a reason to be quiet. And I think my greatest trepidation wasn't just this kind of clockwork orange fear of getting it wrong, is the fact that you need so much knowledge, or ideally you would need so much knowledge, and yet there is an urgency also to speak, and not everybody can have all this knowledge, and you can't leave it clearly to those who claim to have all the knowledge. So there has to be a Xinwei had a beautiful, our colleague Xinwei, who's also given presentations in this program. I think he called it epistemic generosity. The fact that we trust each other in trying to work our way into this complexity, and that it doesn't have to be something that is left to specialists only. In fact, we have a moral obligation not to leave this only to specialists. Although we also have a moral obligation, I think, to listen carefully to those who do have specialist knowledge. But yeah, thank you so much, George. I really appreciate it. Would you like to introduce yourself as our moderator as well?
Yes, definitely. Hi, everyone. My name is Satyam. I'm originally from Delhi, but I relocated to London last year as a part of a curatorial fellowship. It's called New Curators. It's hosted at the South London Gallery. And it's run by the ex-curators of Tate Modern, Mark Godfrey and Karen Greenberg. So I relocated here in September, and we are working on a project which will open at the Camden Arts Centre in July. It's with a Canadian artist of Cree ancestry, Dwayne Linklater. Otherwise, I have a bachelor's in history and a master's in gender studies. And I have been interested, my research interests are around issues of labor, sexuality, and the political economy of contemporary arts in South Asia. Very recently, I have started writing and thinking about the politics of hurt, identity, and representation in contemporary arts. And I believe this seminar, and at the New Center, I'm a student in the art and curatorial department, so to say. And I believe that this seminar would actually help me in sort of understanding how has the genocide in Gaza impacted the art world, and what are the decisions that have been taken in light of that. And yeah, so.
Lovely, thank you, and thank you also for your moderation. It's something that is very, very much appreciated, because I get flustered if I had to also do organizational things in the background. It would be chaos.
Thank you.
More chaos. Thank you, Frida.
Hi, I'm Frida Toranzo-Jäger. I'm an artist. My most recent important exhibition was at the Venice Biennial. I used to be a former professor at UCLA I was teaching a class called Crit. So I found this seminar super important because I think there is such a lack of tools for criticality in this specific conflict. And I feel very lost that all the institutions are letting us down when it comes to this, and how to talk about it, how to discuss it, how to create a narrative for everyone to deal with this horrific thing that's happening and I think it's affecting us all. It's affecting human rights in the world. So I am very, very grateful that this is happening.
Thank you, Frida. Really appreciate it. Diego.
You can hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, I am Diego Isaac, currently based in Bogota. I'm a sociologist, then I made a master in philosophy. I took the Simondon course last year. And I'm really interested in this seminar mainly for one reason, that is the scope on the way in which this concept of the Great Refusal is connected with the historical memory. And I think that in my context as like a Colombian person, we have a lot of reflections and experience about historical memory and the paradoxical thing about being a society that is still in war. Like we're living currently a war, but at the same time we're like trying to find the truth about the conflict. So this is like some paradoxical thing, and sometimes it seems like the war is so normalized and we neglect at some point the war, that it is like very chaotic, like thinking about thinking about the truth of the conflict in a society that is still in war. And the other reason maybe is like a more political one. Maybe I think that what is happening now in Palestine, from the perspective maybe from somebody from the global south, seems like a big deploy of new techniques of power and oppression, and everybody seems like susceptible to be like touched by this violence, like from the West being like in this big wave of far right of fascism, and it is very weird, like feeling that there are new ways of uh, like exercising the power over vulnerable bodies, over people that is considered less than human. And I think that things are happening right now, maybe what is happening with the migrants in the United States is not the same thing, I will say, like different cases, but I think like there is a trend of new ways in which the power is exercised over the people that is not in the Western. So I think this is very interesting seeing Francisco also. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Diego. Yeah, in fact, I like very much the idea of using the Great Refusal as a prism of looking at history and the various denials and positioning ourselves towards each country towards its own history. Obviously, Germany is foremost theatrical about it, but living in the UK has its own theatricalities around how it stages its past. And yeah, thank you. That's a very important point. Persa?
Hello, my name is Parsa. I'm a sound designer and multimedia artist from Iran. My main interests are like my main fields are speculative realism and post-humanism. And I took this seminar because we have been living with this fear of war in Iran and Middle East. And as an Iranian, it's like this conflict, it's our daily struggle. And we've been living with this fear for a very long time. So it was related, kinda. And the second cause was I've been following your work and RU's work because I'm a sound designer. So I really wanted to take this class with you. That's all.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. And it's a nice diversity of perspectives and backgrounds coming together already here. Daria?
Hi everyone, I'm Daria. I'm based in London. I'm a curator and an art historian. I'm doing a PhD at UCL in London. And my PhD is about the first female photographers in Palestine, so late 19th century, early 20th century, and especially how they documented women. And I'm trying to look at how women from very different backgrounds, so some were foreign who lived in the region, some were native to the region, some were Jews, some were Christian, then from all over, how they documented each other, and kind of trying to see the possibilities through photography and through this kind of like gender solidarity that maybe we can find some kind of hope for the future through this very distant past that, before the kind of like ethno-nationalist divide of our present moment. And so, of course, this is very relevant to me, even though I'm not really looking into what is happening now, but more to the past. But also the idea of the Great Refusal is something that is of potentialities and of possibilities, I think is quite relevant to what I'm trying to see or look into. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you, Daria. I also look forward to when this becomes a publication. Your project is going to be awesome. And I think it's worth remembering also that when we look at all that is wrong now, that we never speak or rarely speak of all the initiatives and all the people who are working, who have been for decades and continue to work on the ground all the time, both Palestinians and Israelis, to do projects together, to make films together, to have archives together. So this isn't something, in a way, I wish my presentation today had been about this. I hope that this is something that's going to come through in the next sessions through the other contributors. And if it doesn't, then it would be nice if all of you, if you find resources like this, that we constitute also a folder together where we chuck all these pieces of the map of possibilities and partial actualizations together, all the people that work in different parts of the world on this mosaic of making things possible and actual in the manner of the Great Refusal. So maybe I'll write a little message about this later, reminding everyone. But thank you, Daria. Paula.
Okay, hello. I'm Paula. I'm Colombian from Bogota also, but I'm based in Milan in Italy. I have a background in arts. I did a master on curation, and I'm recently most engaged writing about artisanship and some indigenous works in Colombia. And yeah, I think I'm here, as you said, because I'm convinced that what we do, art and philosophy, humanity, shouldn't be apart from life. It's a contradiction. So yeah, and how this touch every one of us, and it's also very nice to see how these great refusals can be found in every background, personal and political. And as Diego said, in Colombia, we live in a big refusal, I think. And yeah, it's really nice always hearing from you and from everyone.
Thank you, Paula. Parham, are you there? Hi.
Hello, I'm Parham. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. I'm Iranian. I'm based in London for now as part of artist residency. I am academically trained to be a painter, but since the 7th of October, I've stopped painting because, well, basically, when you frame something, you are declaring priority. And I think there is no image more important with more philosophical, moral gravity than the images coming out of Gaza right now. I'm generally Palestine right now. So I feel like painting is like this uh, philosophically defeated kind of medium right now that makes no sense to paint. And I recently burned all of my paintings to make a video art out of it, to make a point
Wow.
about this, and which I can share it with the group, and definitely we can watch it together if you like. And
It is a great refusal.
yeah, yeah, and that's why I took this class basically, because I was thinking, I'm thinking about expanding the script of that film into some sort of essay form, which I would love to have everyone's feedback on it. And the film is being reviewed by more than 150 film festivals right now, even though like very small film festivals, nothing mainstream, obviously. I didn't even try to send it to the mainstream film festivals for obvious reasons. And yeah, and I'm here because I just want to make sure, because I'm surrounded by so many pro-Zionist mad people that I just want to make sure I'm not hallucinating or losing my mind, and I do make sense. So I just want to be around like-minded people to make sure I'm not losing it, basically.
Okay, well, I hope to disappoint you a little bit. because I, in the beginning, the image for this seminar was pictures of pro-Palestinian demonstrators and pictures of pro-Israeli demonstrators. And I know, I think this is my deep conviction, is that in this polarization, what happens is a simplification that makes the disclosure of complexity impossible. So I have to say this again. I mean, and this isn't because the second thing that happened is that someone said, okay, but you have to have also pro-Israeli views. And I resist the polarity. I mean, I know it's a war. Okay, I'm not ignorant about this. I hope I'm not going to say it in a wrong way now. But I do really wish that this is a space where people also feel safe to, and whoever is, there's a lot of people who stand up who are not visible now or with their cameras on now, that they will feel that there might be uncomfortable things to say about the situation that can be heard and that can be discussed. So and in philosophy, I remember once there was I just started out, it was one of the big conferences I went to, and there was a big professor who gave his talk, and someone stood up from the audience and said, I agree with you 100%. And then the speaker said, I think we have a problem now. So, let's leave the consensus is the thing that we should feel safe here to problematize, while at the same time, it's true that also in my own presentation, the thing I grappled with is the fact that I come from a country that has where people have denied or stayed silent until they were forced not to about the Holocaust, and now in the name of speaking about the Holocaust are remaining silent about the genocide, or as Galit was saying, ethnocide. She will probably explain better what she meant by this next time. But yeah, I just want to say for everyone, even as the discussion evolves and your own points of view evolve, that this is a space here where I hope everyone will feel that it's okay also to make him say something you're not sure about, and we'll catch you if we fall. You know what I mean? I hope the same generosity will be extended to me, as I will likely say things that I might have to take a step forward and 2 step back or something like this. I'm not sure. But yeah, thank you so much, Parham, and I can't wait. And also for those who are in London, perhaps we can meet up and have drinks together or something like this. That would be very nice. I don't know, Mstislav, are you there and behind the New Center icon, or would you like to introduce yourself? Or maybe he's not on the camera right now. Okar, are you there? Or Sophia?
Hello, yeah.
Sorry, you're there. Good.
Yeah, sorry, my camera isn't working right now, so please let me speak here. Hello, my name is Olga, and you can call me Carlos. I am originally from Myanmar, but I have to move to Thailand, the neighboring country, because of the dictatorship and the war that is happening in my own country. I was graduated with architecture, but currently working as a curator based on Southeast Asia. And I am here as a student of the Art and Curatorial Practice Department. And also I've been studying at Curating Academy Berlin because I want to do research based on digital curation as a archival method for the conflict zones, because also my country is in war, and many cultural works and cities has been destroyed, and many artists and art practitioners were imprisoned, killed, and had to move to other country. So yeah, everyone is and moreover, it's not just about personal trauma or national trauma. It has becoming collective trauma at this time. So I am joining your seminar, and it's been really, really great, and I'm really inspired by all these stories and all these experience that everyone shares. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Okar. I really look forward also to hearing more about what you come up with, what you will write and present. Thank you. Sophia, and then Marina.
Yeah, hi, I'll go without a camera. Is it okay?
Of course, no problem.
Hi, Cécile. Hi, everyone. I'm Sophia. I'm certificate student here, and thank you for such a discussion. My academic background lies in classics, but now I'm focusing on my other spurious interests, such as the philosophy of technology, sound studies, critical theory, all the same. I'm Russian, so I'm from yet another state who is waging war crimes beyond any comprehension, I think. Yeah, I chose this class because honestly, I cannot see engaging in any intellectual enterprise without situation myself and all of this in the political and historical context. And honestly, through this session, I cannot stop thinking about the particular group of Russian people who are able to recognize war crimes in Ukraine, but who cannot recognize the genocide of the Palestinian people. And so I'm here at the same time trying to make it up for myself with my own political milieu, if I may. Yeah, so thank you for the first session.
Thank you, Sophia. Also, something that occurs to me now is that this first session normally is put online by the New Center. So if any one of you participating here feels that being online is going to potentially have repercussions or something like this, then I would like you to let the organizers know that, and we can also cut, for example, at the presentation or at the beginning of the discussion, whatever. But we just need to make sure that anyone who's intervening in a seminar where you think that is between us, the first session, if it goes online, you need to be able to, to be safe and consent to that. Yeah. So, Marina.
Yeah, hi. My name is Marina. I'm a new media artist and a certificate student here too. So I'm from Russia too, and yeah, all this stuff. And I'm currently based in Georgia. There are the protests for independence from Russian political influence continue and Russian laws. So yeah, and in recent years, there has been a very difficult balance between refusing to participate and refusing not to participate in many events, not only like art events. So yeah, and I'm here because it's very important, at least for me, to sorry, like in making sense of all it and like how people choose sides and all this stuff. Yeah, thank you very much for the seminar. That's all.
Thank you, Marina. I think everyone has introduced themselves, right? Who is here today? If Mrs. Love is there, is it? Well, if he's not, then we can probably release you all back into the wilderness. Little bit over already, but I thank you so much all for your your openness, your candor, also for bringing this incredible wealth of perspectives to it, and I look forward very much to discovering and learning throughout the next sessions and the other speakers. So I didn't ask in the beginning of this session about presentations because I assumed nobody had signed up for the first session for presentations. Did I get this right? Okay, so this might be one thing worth mentioning, and if we could send an email around, that would be great. Also, is there a spreadsheet already for the presentations?
Yeah, there is.
Okay, there is. Then if we could send another email as a reminder that you are invited to find a slot in one of the 3 sessions. We're a lot of people. I much prefer for the presentations to be in class because then everybody else benefits from them too. And usually we have really lovely conversations around it as well. You would either by yourself make a presentation of 10 minutes or join up with, 1 or 2 other people together to make a presentation that could be, 10, 15 minutes. So very short. The subject of the presentations would normally be drawn from some of the literature, the texts that are suggested in the whole syllabus folder. If it can be for the texts that are for the session, it can be something else, but you're also free if there are texts from your own backgrounds that you think are relevant and relate to this idea of the Great Refusal, then you're totally free to also use those. And don't underestimate this aspect of the presentations. Don't overestimate it in the sense that it doesn't need to be like a fully written paper or a big argument. It can just be a chance to make other people familiar with an author they might not know, with an argument made in a text. It can be quite short and simple, but don't underestimate the power that this sharing has, and the kind of community that it creates when you all present ideas to each other. So and also don't underestimate how happy it makes me, because I can never get over how creative and beautiful these presentations usually are. So I'm looking forward to that too. Thank you very much for being here. I feel a lot more relaxed now than before the start of this. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your Saturday, and I'll send emails around for any other information. And I saw also someone asked for my email address. Who was it to ask for the email address? I send you a message. Yeah, Parham, I'll send you a message, and also the others who are in London, perhaps we can go out for a drink or something.
Right. Thank you, everyone.
Have a lovely weekend, everyone.
Thanks so much, everyone. See you next week.
Bye-bye.